Well, good evening, and thanks for joining us for this poison prevention webinar. My name is Tammy Sander. I do communications for the Hamilton County Health Department. And I'm joined tonight by a host of experts, one from the Hamilton County Health Department and two others from the Indiana Poison Center. Tonight's webinar is the third in a series of webinars geared toward children's health. We will host an array of those different topics in the coming months, everything from the importance of lead testing to CPR for children and teen dating violence to tips to talking to your teens about vaping. These webinars are part of a larger effort to reach out to parents, caregivers, and educators so they can make more informed decisions about the health and well-being of their young charges. We'll feature a full list of those webinar topics and the dates at the end of this session. First, let me introduce tonight's panel. Jim Ginder is a health education specialist with the Hamilton County Health Department. In addition to teaching thousands of children across Hamilton County about every health topic imaginable, Jim is also a certified health worker, an EMS instructor, and a certified psychological autopsy investigator. Adam Overberg is a pharmacist, a clinical toxicologist, and the director of the Indiana Poison Center. He also serves as an adjunct assistant professor of emergency medicine at the IU School of Medicine. And finally, Adam Cummins is also a pharmacist as well as a certified specialist in poison information. She takes calls and manages cases for the Poison Center hotline. So if, God forbid, you should ever need to make that phone call, she may very well be the one on the other end of the line. Tonight, we're going to cover a gamut of topics related to poison prevention, starting with exactly what a poison is and where you can most commonly find them in your home. We'll move on to tips for child-proofing your home, a nearly impossible task it may seem, but we've got some thoughts on places that you might not have even considered. And finally, we'll talk about when you should call poison control versus 911 and maybe what that call might look like. We'll also be taking questions throughout the webinar. Feel free to drop those in the chat box. If we don't get to them during the actual presentation, we'll take some time at the end to go ahead and answer some of those questions. I'm going to start with Adam and Amber. You guys are going to get us started with a look at what some of the more common poisons are and how children of different ages tend to get in trouble with them.
Thank you, Tammy. So I guess it's probably best to start off with a definition of what is a poison. And that's any substance that is used in the wrong way by the wrong person in the wrong amount, or even beyond that, if you inhale a gas or get splashed with some kind of substance or product without adequate skin protection. So this could include anything from pharmaceuticals, over-the-counter drugs, to like antifreeze or carbon monoxide, a whole variety of things. Up on the screen now are some statistics from our very own Poison Center data. This is Hamilton County only in 2022. And these were the 5 classes or substances that were most commonly reported to the Poison Center. And these are very, go back one slide. These are very consistent across all of our data. The order changes, but these are the same 5 substances that show up, whether you look at Hamilton County or Indiana as a whole, or the country nationwide.
So specifically looking at our data based on the age of patient, again, this is Hamilton County data, but it's very consistent with the data that we see across the state. Is the large majority of our cases are for children 5 years of age or less. Most commonly, this is they've picked something up and stuck it in their mouth. So as you know, toddlers like to taste the world around them. And so that is the result of the large majority of our calls. We also have a good majority of teens and adolescents who are more likely to have self-harm attempts. And you can see the data distributed across the various age groups, that a large percentage of these as well, in your 20s, 30s, 40s tend to be self-harm events as well. So 50% of children that are poisoned are under the age of 6. As we have indicated, a large percentage of our calls are related to those. There is some statistical data that shows that pediatric poison exposures are reported every 30 seconds. The way I look at this is more that we are surrounded by poisons and toxins, whether it's intentional or not. Kids pick stuff up and stick it in their mouths. And so at the Poison Center, we're always available to answer your questions. The large majority of poisonings are occurring in the home. We do have a handful of calls here and there where patients are exposed, say in a park or a parking lot, but the large majority of those are actually occurring in our own houses.
The demographics of poisoning in children changes over time. It changes by age group. It's very much not homogeneous as like children versus adults. So as Amber said, children under 6 are exploring their world. They are seeing what their grown people are doing and acting like them. They're learning which things are safe to do and which things aren't. And so a lot of their exposures are exploratory and unintentional. Unintentional in this case meaning they're not ingesting or being exposed to a substance with the intent to do anything. They are like they're not using it recreationally or as like a cleaning product. They're not actually doing the cleaning. And so they are largely subject to kind of the environment that they're in. If their big people are not locking up medication, if they're not storing cleaning products out of sight, if they're not putting things well out of reach, then that greatly increases the odds that they will get into whatever it is. As children get older, the motivations change. They are more confident in their world and their environment. They are increasing in their independence and ability to make their own decisions and affect the world around them. And not even a sense of invincibility as much as invulnerability, or at least a lack of appreciation for consequences. The action and reaction, they might see the action, but they may not be able to link that to the outcome. You do start to see more peer pressure, and unfortunately, we are also seeing, especially towards the middle and upper end of this age range, pretty alarming increases in intentional substance use and self-harm. We mention that at all ages, even if you think that your child is too young, we still mention it because with any luck, they will one day be old enough where it is actually a major concern. So we mention it at all ages. As they become adolescents, the motivations change yet again. Substance use is overall declining in adolescence. Since for many years it's been steadily declining, but it's not zero, and I don't know that it ever will be. You also bring into the picture they may be starting to join the workplace and become exposed to cleaning products or industrial chemicals. Medication safety again becomes a huge concern because likely by this point they have some knowledge of which medications and which drugs will have generally what effects and which ones are likely to be harmful and which ones might be euphoric or recreational in some way. And then obviously self-harm is a major and growing concern in this age group, has been for years, drastically increasing over the last 4 or 5 years. That is a subject of a lot of discussion in both the Poison Center world and in medicine in general.
Seniors are a different group, specifically when you think about the number of medications they get put on. Oftentimes we will find that we get a lot of calls about, I didn't read the directions. And so they're taking things without even looking at the bottle, making an assumption that it's 1 pill or 5 pills or what have you. They have a lot of drug interactions. Unfortunately, as we age, the number of medications seems to grow with our age. And so patients will sometimes have multiple prescribers who don't necessarily look at the medications the patient is already on before they start prescribing new medications. Medication regimens can be extremely complex for patients, especially, as we age, sometimes our cognition declines. And so when prescribers will write more complex regimens, such as taking 1 pill 3 times a day, followed by 2 pills 3 times a day, it gets very confusing for patients. They may have diminished eyesight, so it becomes more challenging to even read the directions that are on our prescription labels. Insufficient medical monitoring can happen for a variety of reasons. So sometimes patients just struggle getting to appointments, whether that's because they struggle getting out of their house, they can't drive, or they don't necessarily understand that they need to follow up with their providers. Substance use is definitely something that can be challenging for seniors. Oftentimes this may present itself in the way of alcohol, but there are other substances that seniors can abuse as well. And then self-harm is a challenge. If you think about the amount of patients who get isolated in older age, self-harm is a real reality that we deal with on a regular basis with these patients as well. And then you have to ask yourself, where are poisons in our home? The answer that I give is everywhere. You can see a variety of different places are listed here on the slide. But when we think about poisons, it's not just prescription medications or non-prescription medications. It's our cleaning supplies. It could be our furnace that has a leak. And now we're getting exposed to carbon monoxide. It can be in our garage. Somebody's working on their car. And people carry it around in their purses every single day. So there are chemicals and poisons that surround us all throughout our house, both inside and out.
Jim, you always make this point about purses and man bags.
I do.
Walk us through a little bit about the number of poisons that you can actually find in a woman's purse.
Awesome. Yeah. So just think about, so when I do a lot of education in the school, especially when we talk about poison prevention with the child development classes, I have the students take out their purse or their man bag or whatever bag they have, and I have them look through and we count how many poisons or how many products in their purse or man bag could be seen as a poison for a little kid as well too, or maybe even for somebody who may have some developmental disabilities as well too. And my big thing when I teach about poison prevention is if you have a purse or man bag or whatever, you need to make sure you zip it up or snap it up or do whatever and keep it up high so those little ones don't have access to it as well too. Next slide, please. So this also just gives you an example of how poisons actually get into our system. Number one is ingested, so that's taken by mouth. The second one is inhaled, so we breathe it in. And a lot of people think that when you inhale things, it's just like bug spray, but that also could be fumes from a car. It could be fumes from your grill, from vaping as well too. Is it injected? That is actually injected into the body. Is it spilled on the skin? Because we know the skin can absorb things, and also splashed in the eyes as well too. And I think something that's really important with grilling season coming out, making sure that when people grill, that they grill outside, not in their house or not in their garage as well too, because of that CO poison. We want to make sure that when people are grilling, that it's done outside as well too, in a well ventilated area as well too. So this is an activity that I do with my high school students all the time when we talk about poisons. So, and what's really scary, if we have a little one, they're going to have a hard time making the difference between is something real and something is not real, right? And these are some examples that I have. So at the top one, you can see the top one and bottom one with the pumpkins. They look almost exactly the same, but one is actually candy that we see in the fall or around Halloween, and the other one would be the bottom one. These are wax things that go in like a diffuser that actually break down. You put a light underneath it, and that wax melts, and it's supposed to smell like pumpkins. So the two in the containers here, one is actually sugar, and the other one's actually borax, which is a type of cleaning solution. Then the other two here, one is gummy vitamins, and the also one is just candy as well too. And that's what makes it really scary, because a lot of individuals think that they are using a product, but it's really a medication, or it's another type of product. And here's some other examples. The top one, this is actually the Easter Bunny here. This is actually a soap compared to the candy down here. The top one, this is vegetable oil that you cook with, and this is motor oil. Then this is something that's really scary. And I know our poison friends can tell us that how many calls they've received where maybe kids are getting hold of their mom and dad, or maybe sister's brother edibles as well too, because they look so much like candy. So you can see the top one looks like the peach rings that probably all of us had when we were little. Then you can see the bottom ones, these are the hemp ones as well too. And I think that's something that's really important, that if people do use hemp or CBD or Delta 8, that it's up high and locked up, so the little ones or anybody can't get into them that shouldn't be getting into them as well. So how do I poison proof my house? Well, something that a lot of people think is we have to poison proof our house. It's more we have to prevent people from getting poisoned as well too. So it's going to be really difficult sometimes to poison proof your house, because little kids can get into things really easy. And if you have kids or grandkids, you know how easily they get into stuff. And you know, when that old wives' tale, if a child is not, hey, Tammy, you lost your presentation. So you're good. So a lot of times, you know, that old wise tale that if kids are quiet, they're in trouble. They're probably doing something they're not supposed to be doing. So I think that's something that we think about with this as well too. And we'll give a second here while Tammy pulls up the screen. And another thing I think is really important is, you know, a lot of people think when they get their medication from the pharmacy, they think the tops of the medication are child-proof. They're not. They're actually child-resistant, which means that if you give a child one of those medication bottles, and within about 5 or 6 minutes, they're going to figure out how to get into it, because they've probably seen mom or dad or grandpa and grandpa try and figure out how to open it. And as we go on, our friends from the Poison Center will talk more about it as well. And that's the reason why, if you don't need those funky, like if you don't have arthritis, you really shouldn't get the pop off lids, because that's just an easier way for little ones to get into it. So there's some things that we'll talk a little bit later about what we can do to prevent these poisons as well too.
And Jim, can you see my?
We cannot see
You
your
still
screen.
can't see it.
No.
Not now.
Mm-mm.
Well, I'm sorry for this hiccup here, guys.
Do you want me to see if I can, what? Oh,
Yep,
there you go.
I got it. We're good. And do you mind if I go ahead and roll your
Yeah,
video?
good. So this is a quick video. I think it's kind of demonstrates about poison prevention or poison.
She get better at it? All right. Are you gonna show mommy? Show me. How'd you do it?
All right, Mason, I'm gonna fix this so you can't open it. Okay, that is impossible to open now. What?
Child-proof, child-proof. I'll just push the button right here. And voila. Oh, that's right. Child-proof my butt.
We put those in yesterday.
No.
Yeah. But what you doing in there?
That was fun.
What? When? What was fun?
Um,
Let's see.
spinning.
Oh my gosh.
Or with what did you open the door?
Yes, with this.
With the air pin?
Yes.
So you picked the lock.
I think we got the idea, Jim. Seems nearly impossible.
Yeah, exactly. And I think something that I know our poison friends will tell you this, that if you're going to give a child their medicine, make sure you don't call it candy. Because I think back in the old days, we would say, hey, let's take some candy, but it's really medicine as well, too. And I think that's something that we want to prevent as well. And here's just some things that with our legislation that has came around to hopefully prevent some poisons from occurring. We talk about the Poison Prevention Act of 1970 that talks about what information that has to go out with different products, and also making sure that we have the poison resistant caps on things as well too. Same thing with the Consumer Public Safety Commission. That was actually a commission that was formed in 1972 that basically says, hey, as like the maker of bleach or Tide or whatever, any type of product, you have to make sure that you prevent kids from actually getting poisoned with those as well too. And we also came up with the mandatory child resistant caps as well too, as we talked about. And you can see because of these rules, our number of kids actually who've passed away from a poison has actually dropped significantly nationwide as well too. Okay, so this just kind of gives you an idea of what we just talked about. Like prescription medicine and over-the-counter medicine has to have these child-resistant caps on it as well too. Just like think about all the chemicals that you have underneath your sink as well too. And as a health department, something we also talk about is these chemicals should not be out when you're cooking because we have a high risk of cross-contamination. And also, I'm a big fan that if you're taking like bleach out of this container and put it in a different container, make sure you label that other container as well too, and make sure you don't put things in things that look alike. So great example is, let's say you have bleach, right? And you take the bleach and pour it maybe in a Sprite bottle. Well, probably not the best thing to do unless you take the Sprite label off and actually label it to say bleach as well. So I think that's something that a lot of people forget to do. We also know things like mouthwash and eye drops and insect repellent have to have these child resistant caps on it as well too. And these are some of the different caps. We kind of talked a little bit about the pulling rings, the the push and screw rings, the pop off ones. So I think it's really important if, let's say, grandma, grandpa, or older parent that have arthritis, that if they really don't need that pop off lid, that they don't use it, because it's really easy for a child to pop that off as well too. And we're all pretty familiar with the squeeze and pull lid that takes 20 minutes to get in to that, to try and figure out what's the best way to open it as well too. So these are some child resistant caps that we should make sure that we are using, but just be really careful with the pull off ones, because those can come off really easy as well too. Then this is something that's just came out a few years ago. And this is something that you see a lot in art material. So if you ever have Crayola markers laying around in the home, flip them over and you should see this AP stamp on them. And basically what it means is this means that these products are non-toxic. So things like Play-Doh and markers should have this AP stamp on it as well too. And these mean that they're non-toxic, and there's no harm of poisoning from these products. It may make them sick if they eat tons of Play-Doh, which is kind of gross, but they may get sick that way as well too. And when we flip to the other slide, if you see anything that has the CL, these products are toxic to kids. So a lot of times, one example you'll see is if you ever use cobalt blue, which is a type of paint, you'll see the CL icon on the paint saying, hey, this paint is toxic. Make sure if you get it on your hands, you wash your hands, keep it away from your mouth, your eyes, all that stuff as well too. So just make sure that you look for these two symbols on your different products. And again, they're specifically on art products as well too. And how are we going to store dangerous things? One of the things that's pretty important is I tell people store them up high. And I'm also a big fan of getting them locked up as well too. If you can put a lock on that, because again, those little ones like to crawl and they like to explore as well too. So make sure things are up high and make sure that you actually have a lock on it as well too. And you can see this great picture in possibly a laundry room where everything is up high. The only concern I would make with the laundry picture, make sure there's no like chairs or anything that a kid could push up against it and climb on top of it and get that product as well. So let's talk a little bit about how do we get rid of old medication. So the first one is take back events. So the DEA, which is the Drug Enforcement Administration, has two big take back events every 2 years. It's usually in the spring and in the fall, like October. So our take back day here in Hamilton County is going to be April 27th. And it's going to be at Riverview Hospital here in Noblesville. And also our partners in Westfield Police Department is also doing a take back day as well too. Again, we talk about that police stations as well too, our local pharmacies as well. And you can also, if you have trouble with taking that medication to those take back days, you can actually throw it in the trash. But what you need to do is you need to mix it with kitty litter or coffee grounds and make sure you take it out on the day that trash day is due. Then also take a black Sharpie and cross out your information, or you're going to rip off that label as well too. And again, it's really important to take that put that medication in the trash the day that trash is going to be picked up as well too, so people don't go through the trash. If you have cough medicine, and again, you're not going to, if you can't get it to a take back event, put coffee grounds and kitty litter in it, shake it up so the coffee grounds and kitty litter can be absorbed in it and scratch off that information. And something that I tell people, and I think Adam's going to talk a little bit about this in a second, we don't want you to flush medicine down the toilet because it can actually get into the water supply as well too. And I'm also a big fan that, you know, when you were little and you weren't feeling good and mom and dad's like, hey, I'm going to give you some cough medicine, and they go to the drawer and actually pull out a teaspoon. We know teaspoons come in all different shapes and all different sizes. So it's really important that if you're going to give medication that you use the proper measuring device, such as actually a teaspoon or actual tablespoon, or, you know, when you get cough medicine, you get the little cup that comes with it as well too. That's appropriate. Or how many of you remember when you were little and mom and dad used the syringe and put the medicine on, drew it up in the syringe, and they set on you and squirted in your mouth and all that type of stuff as well too. So just making sure that we use the proper the proper dose and the proper way to give that medication as well too.
I want to send it back to Ab and Amber. There's some important things to make sure that we don't do when we fear that someone's been poisoned. Can you kind of run us through the top three?
Gladly. And we hear these a lot, and we deal with these a lot. And if we can get the message out, then I think it will be beneficial to everybody. So the big things not to do is don't induce vomiting. We don't want to cause anyone to throw up for various reasons. First, you can cause fingers can cause trauma to the throat, and that can be potentially serious. The other part is that a lot of substances, especially in the home, are not as toxic as people kind of make them out to be. And in the Poison Center world, we deal with very few absolutes. We are all about risk assessments and relative risk. And the relative risk of, a couple vitamins or a bottle of melatonin or something is very potentially different than somebody being forced to vomit and then sucking that vomit down into their lungs and getting pneumonia from that. So we do not advocate for inducing vomiting. Ipecac has been off the market for close to 14 years now, but some people still have it floating around in their house. If you do still have Ipecac, please throw it out, and don't use it for anyone who may have taken a substance. And then something else we're seeing a little bit more is activated charcoal. It's sold for a variety of wellness reasons that may or may not have anything to them, but we may use that in a medical form, but really even these days, not that much anymore. So please also don't do that. Another question that we get a fair bit is how do we know when to call the Poison Center and how do we know when to call 911? And we will advise you to call 911 if somebody's life is in imminent danger. If they are not responding to loud voices or being shaken, if their breathing is very, very slow or very, very fast, or they look like they're having a hard time breathing. If they're actively having seizures or have had a seizure, those are all reasons to go straight to 911. We'll catch up with you on the back end.
So the Indiana Poison Center, our phone number is actually a national phone number. So it's here on the screen at 800-222-1222. If you are in Indiana with an Indiana zip code or Indiana area code, you should reach the Indiana Poison Center. But this number will get you a Poison Center all across the nation, 24/7. 365. Here in Indiana, we are staffed with pharmacists and nurses that you will talk directly to if you call. And we are a hotline for family members, patients at home. We also follow patients in the hospital. But any person in the entire state can reach us anytime with any questions. The things that we do, we answer your questions, specifically from the public. We may get questions about, we have, someone has taken two times their medicine that is prescribed, or maybe a child has picked something up and put it in their mouth. So we answer a lot of questions all day long, but we also provide advice. So we'll get questions such as, I left the chicken out for overnight. Can I eat it? So we tend to be a one-stop shop for patients when they don't know who to ask. The Poison Center is who they tend to ask. We provide treatment instructions. So for example, if you have taken twice of your medicine, we'll review with you what has happened, and then we'll advise and guide you as to next steps that need to be taken, and whether that is monitor at home or go to the hospital. We will let you know those things. If we are referring you or your family member to the hospital, then we will call that hospital and give them that information with tests that need to be done, how long that you should be monitored, what to look for. So we try to prepare the hospital as best as we can to receive you in the care that will be necessary. And then we'll follow up with you. So for example, if your child has gotten something in their eye and we're telling you to wash it out, we'll call back and make sure that that child is doing fine and doesn't need to go to the hospital. So we will follow up with patients at home to make sure that everything is okay. And if things have changed and we need to send you to the hospital, then we'll take those steps as well.
It may not always be, not everybody has called a Poison Center, and so I think it's useful to go over what that conversation will be like. We answer very, very quickly. On average, about 13 seconds from time of connection to talking to a real live person. And what that person who answers your call is going to want to know is how is the patient doing? How is the person who is exposed doing right now? Are they having any symptoms? Are they talking to you? Are they awake? Are they responding appropriately? How old are they? Especially if they are a child, they may want to know approximately how much do they weigh. It doesn't have to be very exact, but the closer the better. And usually something like 50 pounds is fine. Like if you can ballpark it, that's usually pretty good. We will ask about about how long it's been since the exposure. I don't know is an acceptable answer. We deal with that a lot as well. And where the exposure happened. Was it at work? Was it at home? Was it at daycare? Where did this happen? Things that are helpful to us to know is what was the product? What is the actual name of the product? Particularly with over-the-counter medications and like household cleaning products, we can do a fair bit of sleuthing ourselves. So if you can give us the actual name on the package, we can usually figure out what's in it, how much is in it, and whether or not that's a concern. So truly, we don't need, go back one slide, please. Basically, most of this data is helpful, but not necessarily required. And one thing that you'll note that is not on this list is your name, your phone number, any identifying information. All of that is optional. We will ask for the zip code of the person who's calling for statistical purposes, but if you don't want to provide your name or your phone number or even the hospital that you plan to go to, you don't have to.
So if you're calling the Poison Center, one of the things that's most helpful for us is if a medication or product was ingested, that you actually have that product available. Oftentimes, as a specialist in poison information, I'll get, hold on, I don't have it, or I threw it away. It's really hard for us to help when we don't have information. And so if you're calling, we can identify medications. And so one of the things with prescription medications and a lot of over-the-counter medications is they actually have an imprint on them, and that imprint is like a special code, kind of like a barcode on a product in the store. It is a code that helps us identify the medication. And so if you have the imprint number available, that is extremely helpful. If not, you can explain things like the size, the shape, the color of what was ingested, whether it was a tablet or a capsule. Any kind of identifying information you can give us will help us to be able to give more clear and concise and appropriate information based on what your situation might be.
All right. Let's open it up now for questions. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. We'll try to answer as many of those as we can. While we're waiting on that, I'm going to bring up some additional resources. Adam, Amber, if you want to walk us through any of these specifically that you think are beneficial if people want more information.
I'll say that we do get a fair number of animal poison calls. We are not animal trained, but we may be able to provide some basic information. But we may also refer you to one of the 2 animal poison centers. So they are wonderful people. They come to our conferences as well, and so they are as good as a human poison center. So if you have a pet poison concern, like the animal poison center is the way to go.
And Amber, you brought up 988 when we were talking yesterday. You often refer that number to many people who call in. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we will get calls specifically on patients who are, suicidal or they're in crisis. I often tell people the mental health of Americans is struggling. It's on the struggle bus, and we are trying to use every resource we can. And the creation of 988 for people who are just needing some assistance is a vital tool. And you don't have to be suicidal to call them. They have a wealth of information that can be helpful. And so we will sometimes refer patients to that as an alternative to, when they are really adamantly not wanting to go to the ER. But they are struggling and need someone to talk to, and they are specialists in that, and can be a great resource for patients. And I believe, much like calling the Poison Center, their services are free, and so it is a great resource that we're trying to share with people as it's needed.
Jim, are we seeing any questions?
No questions.
No. Well, I've got this slide up. This is the best way to contact Jim, Amber, or Adam. But please note that this phone number here is for administrative and non-clinical inquiries only. If you do have a poison emergency, you need to call that 1-800 number. And as we promised, a look at the slate of upcoming webinars we'll be hosting this year. As Jim mentioned, April 27th is National Drug Take Back Day, which is a natural extension of the conversation that, of course, that we've been having tonight. And so on April 24th, we'll have the Sheriff's Office join us, as well as the Hamilton County Council on Alcohol and Other Drugs, talking about their Take Back event and some other tips for properly disposing of old medications. If you're interested in participating in any of these upcoming webinars, please log on to the Hamilton County Health Department's website, click on the Health Education button, and then you'll look for the Children's Webinar tab, and there'll be a registration link for any and all of these upcoming webinars. We want to thank you guys again for joining us tonight. Feel free again to reach out to Jim, Amber, Adam with any questions. We appreciate you taking the time to listen and learn. If you know someone who might be able to benefit from this webinar, or there's someone you'd like to share it with, we will post this to our social media accounts tomorrow. the recording of this actual presentation. So feel free to share it far